listening to The Edge, everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from Megaware KeelGuard Studios.
Here we go, BassEdge Radio, May 1st edition, Aaron. I know you're a huge baseball fan, and Cardinals off to a interesting start after usually doing very well.
I mean, he's
right.
He's the DH.
Exactly. So I know you're a huge baseball fan. You got to be happy to have the first month of MLB under your belt, and we may get into that a little bit here today. But we're going to get into some bass fishing. Want to welcome everybody to another great episode, of course, of BassEdge Radio.
And as always, Kurt, as we know, all things BassEdge brought to us by our great friends at Megaware KeelGuard right there in Ogden, Utah. All of the products that every single one of us need on our boats and personal watercraft, from the first do-it-yourself keel protector, the skate guard, the battery guard, all of those things that really just help protect our boats. And certainly all those things can be checked out at keelguard.com. Kurt, I think it might have been maybe the April 1st show. I might be an episode or so off, but we were talking concerning the cancellation of tournaments, right? And
yeah.
I believe through in our conversation concerning Bass Blaster, Jay had brought up that there's more stuff being canceled now than ever. And I'm kind of want to throw out to you, is that like the new trend with what we're seeing here in the last few weeks?
I got no idea, Aaron. You're right. Jay brought that up through his Bass Blaster newsletter over the last couple of weeks. And man, it's interesting. You got two Toyota events. You got one at, this is the MLF organization. You got one there at Santee Cooper, 2 days canceled. So they had a 1 day shootout. And then you had Lake Texoma Toyota Series event that also had 2 days canceled, which resulted in a 1 day shootout. Then you had a BASS Open event on Lake Cherokee that had 1 day canceled that resulted in, just a shortening of the event. And man, it seems like there's just I don't know if it's the weather's getting more crazy than it used to, or we're just getting more cautious because our boats are making longer runs. We're just thinking that, anglers need to be able to make those runs to areas they want to fish rather than just dealing with the conditions of the day. I remember back in the day, they would let you go. Almost no matter what.
It could be a whiteout of fog or 4 foot, rollers inside the no wake buoys, and it's go time.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember blasting off in the middle of thunderstorms, in the 90s. It was absolutely nuts. Of course, we didn't have the same weather details that we do today, which play a big role. Of course, boats were different too. Much fewer people made long runs. Now it seems to be pretty standard.
And I do think, Kurt, with the popularity of the sport, at least with the circuits that I'm exposed to, the fields, I mean, the Ozark division on the MLF BFL, we're running full fields, 230. I mean, I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but it is interesting. And, while we're on the topic of competitive fishing, what about Christie at Chick and then Ott at, Palestine?
Yeah, that's right. So you got the recent Bassmaster Elite Series champion, now two-time winner in 2022, Jason Christie. Of course, won the Classic earlier this year, now takes a title at Chickamauga in between a tough event he had there at Santee Cooper where he finished in the bottom 10 or so of the field. So just goes to show, it's not easy out there. I'll just say that, even for the best in the world. But, yeah, man, Jason got the win. He's raking in the cash this year. I think he's over, $400,000 or $500,000 already. And, we're here at May 1. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, his quarterly estimates are going to be a little higher than normal.
Yes, absolutely. I'll throw this at you. You mentioned Ott winning the MLF heavy hitters on the Bass Pro Tour over there at Lake Palestine. Kind of an interesting event. They had a 3-pound minimum. There was, which resulted in some fewer fish being caught, but it was a heavy hitters event. But here I want to throw this at you, Aaron. Notice that Alton Jones Jr. won $50K for Big Bass of one of the days. He won $100K for Big Bass of the tournament. This is Alton Jones Jr. He finished in the top 10, so his total earnings were a little over $160,000 in total. The winner of the event, Ott Defoe, walked home with $100,000. So Alton, just for catching some big fish, wins 161. Ott wins a 100. What's your take on that?
I will say this. It seems a little off to me. However, let me also throw out the disclaimer that all anglers participating in this kind of knew, the rules and knew the payout situation. But to me, as an observer, right, at the high ranks of professional, right, these are the top guys, yourself and all of them that compete and do this for a living. It seems a little off to be kind of placing so much emphasis on just the big fish, in my opinion. I think the skill level, of going out and putting together a tournament win, as we all know, of whether it's, a 5-fish limit or trying to catch, total weight and continuing to be consistent, takes a lot more skill. Whereas in my opinion, a bigger fish, there's a little more luck involved. But hey, that's just me, Kurt. What about you?
Yeah, well, it is a special event, so I kind of get that. You've got a lot of big bass series around the country, that weekend anglers participate in, which are super cool events, and people win a lot of money. Actually, I saw that someone there on, I believe it was Table Rock, won 2 big bass events in the same weekend. His last name was Harrison. So I saw that actually through another newsletter. So I think they're trying to relate to maybe some other weekend anglers, so the heavy hitters obviously being a special format. But I still believe the winner of the event that caught more big bass throughout it to have the heaviest weight probably should take home more of the money. But who knows? It's just an interesting concept, and good for MLF on putting this event on, because it is pretty cool with an emphasis on big bass rather than the standard, catch as many as you can, weigh and release. So it's an interesting concept, but I thought those numbers kind of jumped out.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing, Aaron, is that several of those big fish that Alton Jones Jr. caught during the event, including the biggest, was caught on a bait made by Geecrack. And we're going to move in to segment B now, and the Geecrack USA President, Kazuki Kitajima, is going to join us talking about Geecrack baits, what's special about Geecrack baits, so that we can all learn more about new Japanese lure companies coming into the U.S. market. Y'all stay tuned. We're going to be right back.
Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Get pro-level performance with the Nitro Z18, the official boat of Major League Fishing. The Z18, with its nimble handling and versatility, sports many of the features in the larger boats in the line, like a Guardian Live Well, a heavily insulated cooler, dual 8-foot rod storage, and our smooth and fast NVT hull. Every Nitro boat is laid out to do one thing very well: catch fish. Enormous front decks, up to 45 square feet on the Z21, allow maximum mobility when battling unruly bass, and feature low-profile gunnels for ease of skipping, pitching, flipping, or landing fish. Nitro Performance Bass Boats, pure fishing machines.
Aaron, one of the newest lure companies to come over to the USA from its origins, Japan, is Geecrack. Some of our listeners may have heard of it before, some maybe not. We always like to bring new information, obviously, to our listeners, but certainly this lure company is making some waves in this trendy lure market. To tell us more about the Geecrack brand and what makes it unique is Geecrack USA President Kazuki Kitajima. Thanks for stopping by here on BassEdge, Kazuki.
Thank you guys for having me, Cart. Glad to be here.
Well, Kazuki, appreciate you bringing the knowledge on this new hot product in the bass fishing industry. The buzz I see in the U.S. right now is the plastics and the SAF material. What makes, I guess, that different than other plastics, and what advantages does it provide anglers looking for more bites?
Well, Aaron, I'm kind of glad you asked me about this material. It's actually, we pronounce it as SAF material, and many of anglers may be drawn from the uniqueness, like unique design of our bait. But what makes our bait so different and special is this material. It stands for like salt, amino acid, and flavor. So SAF material. And, we all know salt is great for the baits. We got Gary Yamamoto starting from the Senko's, good salt heavy content. And what makes different from our material from other baits is amino acid. amino acid it's called umami in Japanese. If you are in the restaurant or food business, you might know this term, but it's like an essence of good taste or good flavor. It's what people recognize as a good taste. And this amino acid, it's like if you taste the bait, I don't recommend, but if you taste the bait,
I was just thinking, should I start eating more Geecrack?
I would recommend you eating it, but if you taste it, if you just put it on your tongue, you actually can kind of taste it it has some taste to it. It's not like just a plastic taste. It's got good taste in it. So we definitely believe in this, that fish can taste this difference as well. And also the flavor, it's very unique too. Its flavor is not just rubbed on the surface. It's in the material. It's in the process of making the material. So it lasts longer and it gets stronger as well. It's made with shrimp flavor and some special essence in there. And many people kind of make fun of it. Like it kind of smells like Fritos, but it does smells like Fritos.
Now I really need to eat some of the stuff.
Yeah, but it is very strong too. So if you leave it in the boat or in the car, it's strong.
What's cool is just like a different plastic or different design of a plastic will attract a bass. I also believe now, Geecrack taking it to the next level of a different scent and different taste for the bass. So maybe if they've tasted some other lure companies that now has a different taste or different smell, so they may be more attracted or interested to bite the lure. So I think that's pretty cool. The design specifically of several of the Geecrack lures, like the bellows gill, really different than a traditional plastic in the U.S. What is the biggest draw for that design from anglers? And I see it work in unique ways. Can you discuss some techniques anglers can implement that are non-traditional?
Yes, definitely. The bellows gill is a very unique bait. It's got very deep ribs in it. It shapes kind of like a bluegill. That's why it's called bellows gill. But that deep rib, it makes different from other baits. There were some ribs bait before, and there are some good one as well right now. Right. But that deep ribs create lots of action, lots of movement when you move it. And one of the most popular rigs, the free rig, it's kind of new now, but it's very popular in Japan. It's pretty much you use like a drop shot weight, it's round weight instead of bullet weight. You don't want to use the peg. The sinker is free. It goes down to the bottom first, and then just the bait follows really slow. And that time lag right there, it makes really fish go crazy. And free rig can be fish around cover. You can fish deep as well. Kind of like a Carolina rig. So it's very versatile way to rig it. And bellows gill will match it really perfectly. Because bellows gill imitates blue as like a big shad, and fish around shad, fish around deep ledge, where bass are following big shad. And they are really great way to catch fish. And also there's another way actually that's getting popular in Japan is neko rigging bellows gill. Usually people use neko rig with like a straight worm, but bellows gill, if you rig it neko rig way, it makes a crazy action. And especially right now around beds, around shallow, they go nuts. And we actually have like a wacky super. Bellows gill is so big, so volume, and just regular O-ring rubber band won't do it. So you have to use some special tool for it. And our wacky stopper called Neko Hacks makes it really easy, and it's very unique, cool stuff that people should try with the bellows gill.
That is cool. I've even last year at the U.S. Open, I saw a West Coast angler drop shotting the small bellows gill.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. The bellows gill actually comes in 2 inch, 2.8 inch, 3.8, and 5.8. So there are so many different ways you can rig it. Only drop shot is a great way for smaller one. For like 5.8 big one, you can rig it with a weighted hook, like a weighted swim bait hook, and fish around cover, fish on tops. Some people are catching giant on that thing too. So.
Very, very interesting. You know, Kazuki, I see some of the hard baits beginning to pop up in the U.S. market. Although many more, I guess, are available on Geecrack.com site. What do you see as kind of the plan for Geecrack to continue growing in the U.S.?
Yes, we did. We right now, for as far as hard bait goes, some cool swim baits called Geeling Neo, Geeling 125. Those are great swim baits, imitating bluegill. But right now we are working on signature bait series with Alton Jones Jr., MLF Pro. We're working on some hard bait with him as well. Swim bait, also maybe crankbait and stuff like that, top water. So definitely look for some new baits.
Kazuki, yes, rapid growth of Geecrack, mostly due, I feel, to the uniqueness of the product. But recently I saw Alton Jones Jr. in the Heavy Hitters event caught two of the biggest bass of the event. He won over $150,000 just using Geecrack baits to catch the biggest fish of the event. Can you dive a little bit more into, I saw on Bass Fan that he has a signature color coming out, but also in a new style of lure that you're going to be releasing here in the next several months.
Yes, it was very cool to watch him catching those big ones. He was using a new bait, his new signature series bait called Bellows Shad. It's kind of like a Bellows Gill, but it's just a little bit slim down version of Bellows Gill. And what makes it really unique is that you can actually pitch it around cover. You can fish with the bladed jigs. With the Bellows Gill, and for that, but Alton Jones Jr., he wanted to be able to fish a little bit faster when he's fishing cover with the bait, and also with the bladed jig trailer, it makes more action in the tail side.
Right.
So it's definitely works for him fishing around the bed and stuff, just like Bellows Gill. And he's using his signature color as well. I think the color he was using the event was AJ Juice. It's kind of like a green pumpkin and the purple flake in it. He loves that color, but also we've got a couple of other signature color as well. So yeah, definitely we're excited about this bait. It's going to be released this summer, so around I guess time.
Wow. Well, exciting to see that. And Kazuki, just want to say thank you for carving out time. I know since Alton Jr.'s win there, I'm sure you guys phone's been ringing off the hook. And speaking of which, what are the best ways to follow Geecrack's growth and for BassEdge Nation to learn more about your baits and how to get them?
It's probably the best way is our social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram, and that's definitely the way to follow our trend over there. And right now, there are several retailers available nationwide. As far as online goes, Tackle Warehouse, we got Tackle Warehouse there, Fish USA, Susquehanna Fishing Tackle, Three Rivers, Becker's, and Hammond's in Georgia. So then go check them out.
No, that's fantastic, and certainly look forward to doing that. Kazuki, again, thanks for taking out time. Thanks for sharing it and making this available to not only all bass fishermen, but certainly giving us the inside scoop here on Bass Edge Radio. Hey, to all Bass Edge Nation, don't go anywhere, as Kurt and I will be coming right back with this episode's featured angler spotlight. Hang right there. We'll be right back.
This is MLF Pro Circuit title champion Jimmy Washam.
This is professional angler Andrew Upshaw.
This is BASS Elite Series champion Bryan Schmidt.
This is BASS Open champion Nick LeBrun, right here on Bass Edge Radio.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
Springtime seems to be a tricky time of year to catch fish consistently. So much movement going on. For most of the southern USA, we're moving into that post-spawn period, and we're going to review all aspects of spring and early summer fishing, but specifically how to target bigger tournament-winning fish. If you've watched any of the BASS events this year, you know he's been extremely successful in these early season tournaments the past several years. Let's get right to it with BASS Elite Series angler Bryan New. Bryan, welcome back on BassEdge Radio.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, springtime fishing, it's I love it. I mean, I love fishing anytime, but springtime it can be really good.
I would second that, Bryan. One of my favorite times of year. Not only are the bass in on the bank, but all species. You never know what you're going to catch. You get lots of bites, and certainly even just for the weekend angler, it keeps the interest and kind of that desire to keep going back out there. You know, Bryan, interestingly enough, like Kurt said, welcome back, and you're one of the very few in the history of all 375 episodes that has appeared on BassEdge, not only as a co-angler winner, but also now in the front of the boat at the highest level. So hats off to you. Congratulations. You know, it began with last year's early spring St. John's win. It has continued recently with Day 1 Bassmaster Classic lead, Day 1 BASS Open lead on Lake Cherokee. Are you targeting, I guess, a bigger than average fish in the spring with certain baits or patterns? Because it's apparent that you've figured out how to tap into something that is unique.
You know, I've never really looked at it that way. Typically, when I go to an event, that event's the only thing that matters. And it's, you know, obviously it's all about trying to figure out what's going on and, you know, trying to do the best in that event. And kind of sitting back and looking at it, when you're in that spawn, pre-spawn, according to where you are in the country, fish use different things to stage and different areas to spawn. Like, you know, Florida, they typically stage in offshore grass or, you know, on shell beds. And then once they go to spawn, they'll move up to the reeds or lily pads, whatever it may be, and then kind of move up somewhat north. I wouldn't call it north, but northern from Florida, you know, the lakes are just set up differently. But kind of backing up, it seems like those pre-spawn fish, a lot of times, certain lakes you can find them stacked up. And then, like, kind of go towards the classic. Like this year, they were staging on shallow, flat docks. And, you know, there was just one fish per dock. Obviously, it's every dock. So it was more of a pattern in that situation than it was, say, down in Florida. Technique-wise, typically it's like a 1-2 punch. It's a moving bait and a pick-apart bait, you know, a slow bait, like a lake that sets up like Hartwell. You know, it's a swim bait and a jig, and, you know, maybe mixing in a wacky worm or a Nico, something like that. Kind of go back to a grass fishery. It's somewhat the same thing, but it may be, you know, a lipless bait like a spro or shad or a square bill or a chatterbait for your moving bait, and then a Zoom Slinky for your pick apart bait. It definitely depends on how the fishery sets up, you know, what kind of structure you have and how the fish set up on those lakes. So I couldn't really narrow it down to 1 or 2 baits, but I would say a slow pick apart bait or cleanup bait. I wouldn't really call it a cleanup bait in that situation because it's not really a cleanup bait. It's more of a slow pick apart bait, and then obviously a reaction bait.
That's good stuff, Bryan. Now, you talked a little bit there about Florida, talked a little bit there about the Hartwell event there at the Classic. How about Cherokee? You throw Cherokee into the mix. Obviously, Hartwell's a little flatter. Florida's obviously flat, but more grass. And then you take a fishery like Cherokee that you excelled in, where you have, you know, steeper banks and obviously a lot more rock in that situation. What was your key to success there as far as how you were able to target bigger fish?
Yeah, so Cherokee obviously was more similar to Hartwell than it would be the St. Johns River or anywhere in Florida.
Right.
But the same deal there. I was targeting pre-spawn fish, and I'm sure, I mean, there's a chance that a few of the fish were spawning. I couldn't see them, and I really don't feel like they were, but the places they were setting up, there is a potential that some of them were spawning. But, you know, Cherokee's a drawdown lake. You know, being from North Carolina, growing up, you fish lakes, and yeah, they'll get high or low, but it's, you know, a couple feet either way. And we never really experienced the drawdown lake. Until I started traveling, I didn't even realize that they did that on certain lakes. But Cherokee, every single year, you know, a lot of lakes, but Cherokee, you know, since we're talking about it, you know, they'll draw it down 15, 20 foot every winter, and then, you know, fill it back up, you know, once it gets late in the spring or early summer. And that being said, I think Cherokee was 13 feet low when we were there. And there's a lot of stuff in the water, but there's not a lot of, you know, good stuff in the water. You've either got flat pea gravel banks, well, I should say, you know, more sloping pea gravel banks where all it is pea gravel, or bluffs. And then you have, you know, a transition bank where it's a flat pea gravel bank and there's little shelf rock, just, you know, it may be 20, 30 feet of it, but you have these little stretches of bank it's just basically a little shelf. And, you know, that's basically what I was fishing there. You know, I was just
Did you have kind of the same 1-2 punch where you were using a reaction bait and a pick apart bait, as you put it?
Absolutely. And, you know, that would be a swim bait. I was throwing like a 5-inch swim bait and, you know, a little small finesse jig, greenfish tackle BLD finesse jig. And, you know, it kind of backing up a little bit. Cherokee has a lot of smallmouth in it. I wasn't particularly targeting smallmouth, but I was catching, you know, I think I weighed in 1 or 2 smallmouth every day, but those smallmouth were mixed in with the largemouth. And kind of on a situation like that, a lake like that, the fish, they're going to go in these creeks, they're going to go in these pockets, coves, and spawn. So, you know, they live on the lake all year, all winter, but then when it gets time to spawn, they know it's time, and they start moving up. And I start looking at the mouths of these places. Anything near the mouth of a spawning area. You know, a spawning area in Florida is completely different than it would be on, you know, that type of lake.
Sure.
Or a normal non-grass lake. Now, of course, the fish will spawn out on a point or just a straight bank, but they definitely like pockets and creeks and stuff like that, a bay, something to kind of get out of the wind, get out of the current if they have that. But throughout a week, typically one of those factors is going to come in. So they like to get in those areas to, you know, just have more protection. So starting at the mouth of those places is really where I start. Now you don't have that shelf rock just everywhere. So you kind of...
How do you locate that? Is it a sonar deal or you just kind of see it, you know, based on the type of bank?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of... Sometimes you can look at your map. You can zoom out on your map and get an idea because it'll be like the way it contours. It'll be a flatter bank, and then all of a sudden one little stretch of the bank will get real tight. But like at Cherokee, actually, when I finally figured that little deal out, I rode around, not the entire lake, but the whole section of the lake that I wanted to fish, I mean, from the dam to just above the bridge, which is really pretty much the whole lake because it turns in the river after there.
Yeah.
So I rode in every single pocket, every single arm, just marking those places that looked right. You know, that last day of practice once I figured that deal out. And I caught some fish, but I really caught most of my fish in one little place. And it was amazing that there was so many fish in there. And it kept reloading because there was actually another guy that was fishing that area, a buddy of mine that I knew. He beat me there the first day, and I was like, dang it. And he actually kind of taught me something that day that, you know, I wasn't planning on doing so much. But it was amazing that there was so many fish in that one little small area. But there was a lot of bait. There was some deeper water close by. The way it's set up, I'm assuming that the fish were there all winter on bait because there was a lot of bait close by in this ditch.
Right.
And there still were fish on that bait in the ditch. I didn't target that just because I wasn't able to make that work in practice. But, you know, it had so many fish in that area, so it kept them reloaded on the bank.
So, Bryan, once you get to the spawning cycle, do you keep fishing and moving, or is it typically your style to slow down with your presentations and kind of try and, you know, squeeze more out of the area?
Yeah, I definitely slow down. You know, I used to put the trolling motor on high and cover as much water as possible. And from time to time, I still am that way. But to me, it seems like, you know, I've learned over the years, no matter where you're at in the country, how the lake sets up. If you can get a few quality bites fairly quick, you need to slow down and really pick things apart. The second day of that event, every single fish I weighed in, I caught more fish, throughout the day, but the ones that I weighed in that final day come in this one small area. And I'm going to say, obviously it wasn't a straight line, but if you stretch the bank out, make it a straight line, I would say it's 400 yards. It's not that big of an area. And it took me probably 3.5 hours to fish that whole stretch, because what I was doing, I was throwing my swim bait, and then I would flip. And I'd flip my little jig and pick every little crack in the rock apart. And when you're in an area that and really picking it apart that way, you really need to slow down and be stealthy and quiet. So, trolling motors like on one, you're just making as little noise as possible, just being as stealthy as possible. And that definitely makes a huge difference. But yeah, so definitely slow down. Once you find an area and you get a few quality bites, there's more fish there. So I definitely slow down and really pick it apart.
I've always found, Bryan, that, kind of what you were mentioning, that when bass start funneling into a zone, maybe a flat or an area, that a lot of fish do winter together, big parts of, areas of bait fish. Your intuition told you that there was a lot of fish that probably wintered out there. I've always found that, especially guiding on Lake Amistad, these fish won't start this migration. It's like a giant parade. They just all keep funneling into the same areas if you're around a large population of fish, and they'll continue to reload and reload. Whereas if it's just a few fish, you might pick a fish off here or there, but they just don't keep coming back, day after day, or even in some cases, week after week as the cycle continues. So it's interesting you mentioned that too. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to jump from this kind of pre-spawn talk where you've been so successful in catching bigger fish and kind of dive into, what's going to be happening in the southern part of the state, which is post-spawn. So y'all stay tuned. We're going to power pole down, but we're going to be right back. Pick Bryan's brain a little bit more about post-spawn fishing right here on BassEdge Radio.
Patented in 2000, perfected over years of testing and real-world punishment, the Power Pole is the ultimate shallow water boat positioning tool. Swift. Power Pole deploys in seconds from anywhere in your boat. Virtually silent, Power Pole won't spook wary fish. Secure in strong current or gusting winds in up to 8 feet of water. Engineered to take it with a lifetime unconditional replacement guarantee on the spike. Power Pole. Swift. Silent. Secure. Visit powerpole.com to find a dealer near you.
BassEdge Radio, presented in part by Mercury Marine, returns with BASS Elite Series angler Bryan New in his featured angler spotlight. Mercury Marine, go boldly.
Bryan, I'd say, spring is tricky in general, but the trickiest time in the spring is probably this post-spawn period, which a lot of the southern half of the U.S. is rolling right into here in the 1st of May. So much is going on with the shad spawn, fry garters, even, the beginning of bluegill beds developing. What is your first strategy to look for in this, post-spawn period?
You're right. It is definitely one of the toughest times, but it's the time I love. The fish get so spread out. By this point in the year, they've had a lot of pressure, no matter where you're at in the country. And, pressure really hurts fishing. So if I get to a lake and, you can tell if the shad spawn's going on pretty quick, from birds sitting on the bank or whatever it may be, that's definitely one of the first things that I look for, because it's an easy meal. The shad's up there, they're doing their thing, and they're right against cover, so they're easy for the bass to target. And the bass can basically just sit there and gorge as much as they want to, whenever they want to. So it's a super easy target for the fish right after the spawn. But that being said, the pressure, once again, it really has a huge effect on that. And it's not like, I've got this magic spot out deep that nobody knows about. It's just any bank on the lake, or, any dock on the lake, anybody can pull up on and catch those fish. But that's definitely a starting place. From there, I typically try to start looking offshore a little bit. Up in the day, I may go get on some sea walls up shallow and just look and see if I see cruisers or see any fish wolf packing, because they do that in the post spawn. But it's a tricky deal. It's hard to, at least for me, I've never been able to put together, okay, this is exactly what's going to be going on. Like, pre-spawn, spawn, exactly where you need to go start for the most part, or at least know what to start looking for. And the post-spawn, the post-spawn, there's so many different things. It's hard to put your finger on one thing. It's like, you can't say, oh, they're going to be staging on this kind of stuff, or they're going to be spawning on this kind of stuff. You got 5 or 6, 10 different things that the fish could be doing, so you got to sample a little bit of all of it. But, that shad spawn, going back to it again, that's definitely the starter. I mean, it really is.
Well, and along those same lines, Bryan, I feel that I can get spun out after first few hours, I should say, in the morning, if I only get a few bass on that type of bite or maybe topwater early. What advice or how can an angler stay consistent throughout the day and the event during the month of May?
Yeah, so, like, the way, and it's kind of funny, like, I've done well. I've been successful for the last several years. Like, I've just took that next step. Things have been going better. And honestly, fishing's tough regardless. I don't care where you go and when you go, it's tough. The worst anglers now are as good as the best anglers 25 years ago.
Right. I agree with that.
I mean, the technology, from the electronics, the rods, reels, line, hooks, baits, everything so much better and so much more advanced nowadays. If you want to learn how to fish, you just get online and do some research for, a couple days instead of going and spending years and years of basically trial and error. So it's a lot tougher, but getting back to your question, it doesn't matter if you catch them on the first 5 casts or last 5 casts. If you just know that it's going to happen and you keep that in your head and you don't get down and you don't start making dumb decisions and just feeling like nothing you do is right, then typically you make it work throughout the day. I mean, perfect example, the first day of the Open at Kissimmee this year, I weighed in at 5'10" that day. I caught my first keeper at 3:15. I caught my 5th keeper, made 2 casts, ran in, and had 2 minutes to spare. Now, that day, it would have been so easy for anybody to spin out. I mean, I caught a few short fish, but I wasn't even catching hardly any fish.
Right.
But I just knew, I said, it's going to happen. I've only got to catch 5. 5's such a small number, but it's so big at the same time. And, I mean, I had a great event there. I think I finished 24th, which realistically out of 225 boats, that's a pretty daggum good
That's
turn.
a dang good finish. Absolutely.
It really is. And, I mean, so many people would have been done. And, I'm not saying that I'm never in that situation and don't spin out, but and it is hard. It's hard not to spin out sometimes. I mean, look at Chickamauga the other week. But even then, I didn't spin out. I was very frustrated, but I didn't spin out.
Bryan, the one thing I do like about May fishing is it kind of spreads people out a little bit, right? There is so much going on. You can start to peak offshore a little bit. Obviously, there's still a great bite up shallow. You got the shad spawn thing going on. You still got fish on docks, but you do start to get some fish offshore. And I feel like this kind of continues through the early part of June, where you kind of get a real opportunity to spread anglers out on what is now crowded waterways all over the United States, right? So in thinking about that a little bit, do you try to specifically find something that's a little offbeat, in this post-spawn and pre-spawn springtime patterns so that you're not fishing as crowded with other anglers? And if so, what are some of those strategies that you try to employ a little bit to keep, I don't say some fish to yourself, but to keep from fishing the same patterns that maybe a majority of the anglers are looking for?
Yeah, it is definitely something that you try to find, something sneaky or whatever you want to call it. Everybody likes to call it, oh, I got me a sneak hole.
Right.
But nowadays it's so hard to find. I mean, one, because most of the lakes, there's been so many events to go to with all the live coverage now, and that stuff's it's awesome. It's great for our sport, but it just, everybody, not only us as professional anglers, all anglers are watching that stuff, and there's just no secrets anymore. There's no secret places. There's no secret techniques. So it's so hard to find something off the wall, something to yourself, something that not everybody's doing. So that being said, yes, I'd still try to find something like that, but it's so hard. And it's typically maybe, you know, something isolated, whether it's an isolated patch of grass or an isolated brush pile. It's more of a pattern deal than a place deal. But like I said, it's super hard to find, and it's kind of a high risk, high reward kind of deal there too. I mean, even then you're taking the risk of it not working, which I guess always doesn't matter what you're doing. You're taking that risk of it not working, but it's more of a numbers thing. I mean, the more isolated targets you can get, the better chance you have of actually catching 5. I mean,
yeah.
If you fish 4 of them, you don't have a good chance of catching 5. But if you fish 54 of them, your odds are a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. And Bryan, one more question before we head into the listener question segment I wanted to get your thoughts on quickly is looking ahead to your elite schedule this month. You know, you have Lake Fork in Texas coming up, generally a big bass factory, but curious to know how you will approach 2022 versus 2021, where you had, you know, a bit of a tough outing.
Yeah, I did. That's
a stinger right there.
It is. Threw a dagger at me. But, you know, destination lakes, Lake Fork's an awesome lake. Don't get me wrong. It's got great big giant ones, but it gets so much pressure. That being said, like last year, the best thing I had going was spawning fish. And I really don't like visually looking at fish on the bed in a tournament. You know, I've got a little better at that over the last year. But so this year, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of fish offshore. We're a little bit later. Shad spawn's probably going to be going on. The lake is really low right now. So I think like that's going to have a huge effect on a lot of things. I mean, one, it's low. There's, you know, less water. There's less places for the fish to go. Still plenty of stuff in the water, but less acreage, I guess I should say, for the place to go get back in stuff. But also it's going to make it even harder to run around, which it was already.
It's already tough, right?
Right, in a lot of places.
Does that make it a deal where you've got to kind of, you know, say, well, I'm going to concentrate on X and Y creek and forget about A, B, and C creek just because it's that much more difficult, or do you just try to keep covering water anyway? How does that strategy for that event?
So I'm definitely going to feel like for this event, maybe not so much practice, but plans for the event is to have an area instead of one deal running around, because you just can't run around when you have that. So I'm definitely going to try to have, you know, a few different things in one small area so I can kind of have a home, so to speak. Plus, when they draw a lake down, typically it stacks the fish up better. You know, they have spread out, so they have to get tighter. And, you know, that can be really good. I mean, some of the, you know, the lake I grew up on, Lake Wiley, the best fishing of my entire life on that lake was, you know, it's happened 2 or 3 times in my life where the lake was like 7-8 foot low, which is a tremendous amount of water for that kind of lake, like so low that all the boat ramps are closed. Fortunate enough for me, I lived on the lake. So, you know, you
got a sneak hole to get in.
yeah. So you can keep the boat there at the house, and it just stacks the fish up so good. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, the lake was down really low. All the ramps were closed, and it had a john boat with a trolling motor. That's it. And every day after school, I mean, we went and we smashed them. No electronics, nothing fancy, just old school fishing and smashing them. I mean, it was so good. The drawdown.
We'll be looking for that same kind of deal at Fork with that low water. It's going to be probably big schools of fish and potentially some crowding. You guys are going to have to work together out there a little bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely going to be some crowding. I'm not super familiar with Fork, but you know, I know for the most part, I mean, I would say at least 75% of our guys in the elites, they're going to be looking for that offshore stuff. I will be as well. And I feel like there's probably only a handful of places that they get. Probably most of the guys already know those handful of places that they get. I don't. But hopefully it's going to go down. There's going to be a party, and I hope to be a part of it.
That's awesome, man. Well, we look forward to watching that event for sure. It's going to be another fun Elite Series tournament to stay tuned with, and hopefully you knock it out of the park, man. We're going to move into the Nitro Performance Bass Boats listener question segment. This question comes in from Rob Campbell on our Facebook page. A little bit off, but you know, this is a great all-around year bait. This is what Rob asked, Bryan, if you can help him with this question. So many jerk baits on the market. What is the best all-around jerk bait for someone new to the technique?
Gosh, that's a hard one. I mean, I definitely
maybe
like
it's a good question since you're not not huge into the jerk. If you were to pick one, all your buddies' information, everything you've seen out there in the tournament world, which one would Bryan New pick up first, right?
I'm going with 2. I'm looking at them right now. I got 1, 2, 3. I got 8 boxes of jerk baits, completely full. But the Sprogus stick, it's that 110 size bait. It's perfect size, but it's a little bit duller action than a lot of the popular ones. It definitely has its place. Highly pressured fish, really cold water. We're kind of away from that now, but the highly pressured, we're not ever going to get away from that. That's probably my go-to. And then, obviously, everybody knows the Mega Bass. It's an extremely good bait. It really is. But if I could only pick one, it would probably be that McStick. Second would probably be the Mega Bass 110.
That's a great point about, a jerk bait's not just a jerk bait. You've got some that are very erratic, some that are more slashing, and some that have a little bit more duller action. So, and they're all good in specific circumstances or situations. So it is tough to pick just one, but you're going with the confidence there, the mixed stick, the size, and they have a lot of great color selections as well. I just got to throw this out there. I love the I'm a Flit jerkbait, the I'm a Flit 120. Yep. It's close to the size of the mixed stick, a little bit larger, but at the same time, it's a little bit thinner, and it's got some wild action too. Aaron, what's your favorite jerkbait to really confuse our listener here?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I hate that we're supposed to be narrowing down the small end of the funnel, but I certainly the 3 that you guys mentioned, I think, are my top choice. One that I do like to use when there's smallmouth present is the X-Wrap, just because it does have a little more erratic side to side, and there's one color that I go to in that, and that is that bright, I call it Mary Kay pink, in that springtime of year when there's smallmouth around. And for some reason, I don't know why they hit that thing, but they do. So yeah, I would definitely lean on the 3 probably more heavily that you guys mentioned versus the X-Wrap. But regardless, great question there, Rob. As always, interesting how anglers use different brands of certain techniques. Bryan, certainly appreciate your insight, of course. And Rob, we just simply need you to log on to BassEdge.com, click the Claim Your Prize tab, fill out the information, let us know that you heard Bryan answer your question right here on episode 375, and a Midway USA gift card is going to be heading your way for that question, where they have just about everything for fishing and then also shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. And
just continued reminder, Bass Edge Nation, we usually throw a post up once or twice a month looking for those questions, so keep looking for that post. You can simply comment on that particular post or send us a DM. Either way, what's your preference? But we also have that Facebook page out there as well. If your question is chosen to be on the show, you will receive a Midway USA gift card, and as Aaron mentioned, where they have just about everything for shooting, hunting, of course, bass fishing, and the outdoors.
Well, Bryan, always fun having you on Bass Edge. Certainly look forward to doing it again sometime in the near future. Any final thoughts for Bass Edge Nation?
Yeah, man, just thanks for having me for sure. It's always a pleasure. It's always fun. But it's not going to be long. I'm going to be getting my things ready for Forks. In the meantime, me and my wife are fishing a tournament on Lake Murray this weekend. So
nice.
I've got to bring my A game, because last tournament we fished, to this day,
she whoop your butt.
She said she did. She did catch the biggest fish that day. So, and I'll never hear the end of it ever. But I'm going to go try to find a great big one on the bed. And that way maybe I can catch the biggest one. Rub that in her face. But
put her in the back of the boat.
That's right. But yeah, man, guys, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, and just keep after it, and
absolutely
go catch the bass.
Bryan, we'll look forward to catching up again sometime, my friend. All the best of luck at Fork, the rest of your Elite Series season. Y'all don't go away. Aaron and I will be right back after this message.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry.
Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
The PowerPole Charge Marine Power Management Station is the most advanced system of its kind available on the market. It does the work of 3 devices, a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system, all in one compact unit. The Charge lets you run your boat's accessories the way you want to run them by allowing you to monitor and control your power usage through the PowerPole app. It automatically devotes power to the batteries that need it the most for maximum efficiency. The new Charge from PowerPole. Power where you need it, power how you need it, power when you need it.
Kurt, as we mentioned kind of when Bryan came on, it's not too many anglers that get to claim being on the show, both as a co-angler champion as well as a top-tier touring pro champion that has done so in their career. Pretty neat story.
Yeah, man, super cool. Bryan takes fishing to a whole nother analytical level, in my opinion. You heard him break down the Florida fisheries versus Cherokee there in Tennessee versus Hartwell there in South Carolina, and just how detailed he gets when he's looking at a body of water, the style of water, the type of water, the cover available, how the fish transition, specifically, obviously, in the interview, talking about springtime transitions and then post-spawn, tactics. So, I just feel like his mindset is just different. Did you feel the same way?
I agree. He's kind of one of those few people to where the wavelength is maybe he processes things much differently. Let's just say that, when you have great mathematicians or engineers or whatever, or artists,
right.
It's like, I can't do that and never would be able to. And right. I just think he has an inherent ability that allows him to do things like you mentioned differently. And then, also, I don't want to skip over our segment B with Kazuki there talking about, Geecrack. I mean, what an interesting story, and obviously the baits work.
Yeah, man, what a crazy growth and quick growth the Geecrack brands had in the United States. It's almost, they kind of started with this cult following with their unique designs. Of course, he talked about the SAF or the SAF material, within those lures. And I got to mention this, Aaron, we're going to have, Kazuki has agreed after the interview, we were talking a little bit, and he is going to supply some products to us to do a giveaway. So BassEdge Nation, be sure you stay tuned to the Instagram account, BassEdge Radio, and the Facebook BassEdge Radio. And Aaron, we're going to post up some Geecrack product that we're going to give away. We'll put the directions out there of how to qualify to win this giveaway on the post, obviously, but want to just let people know and push them to our social media, because we're going to do this Geecrack giveaway. So some BassEdge listeners going to go home not only with all the information we supplied here on the podcast about Geecrack, but also some baits to try. So super cool, and big shout out to Kazuki and Geecrack for supplying that to some lucky BassEdge listener that we will choose in this time frame of May 1 through May 14, while this is the primary episode of BassEdge Radio that Geecrack is in this special segment for. So I'm excited about that.
No, that is exciting.
You cannot win.
I know. That's why I was going to be my next question. You cut me off, but very exciting. And also, while people are signing up for that on social media, send in a listener question. Or if you're sending in a listener question, be sure and enter for the Geecrack giveaway, and multiple ways. And of course, the listener questions, you can get in touch with that Midway USA gift card. Kurt, we have had a full episode full of great information, fun stuff. Always a pleasure being at the mic with you. But we need to call it quits. Let people get out there and get on the water, and hopefully put some of these things that we've talked about today to the test. So for Kurt Dove, I am Aaron Martin. Be sure to stay on all things Bass Edge through our social media platforms like we mentioned, and certainly BassEdge.com. In the meantime, we look forward to hanging with you again for the second show in May, which would be May 15th. So long, everybody.
The Edge is presented by Megaware KeelGuard. For more information on BassEdge or to shop at the BassEdge online store, visit BassEdge.com and be sure to join Kurt Dove and Aaron Martin right here on another episode of The Edge, brought to you in part by Nitro Boats,
Midway USA,
Mercury Marine, Power Pole, and
Transport